Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Ceri Houlbrook of the Folklore Society. Ceri is going to give us the background of folklore and what it embraces, and then a little bit later on, we're going to talk about modern folklore, which is her speciality. So, good to see you.
Very good to see you. Thank you for having me on, Tony.
Absolute pleasure. Can I just read the definition of the website so that we all know where we're going on this one? The term folklore describes the overarching concept that holds together a number of aspects of vernacular culture and cultural traditions, and is also the name of the studying of the discipline. So there we are. And according to me, it didn't have a name until William John Thoms came on the scene. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it was 1846 when William Thoms first coined the word. Before that, it was kind of vernacular literatures or vernacular law. And then, yeah, Thoms, who was just a librarian, a civil servant, wrote it in an article to a magazine, and he was just suggesting it as a term,
Mm,
a compound, which just literally meant the law of the people.
okay.
And it's stuck ever since.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And presumably, we're looking in a lot of these examples at word of mouth, generation to generation situations, because in those days, a lot of the population was illiterate. They didn't have the ability to read or write. And so that's possibly how it all began. Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, when it was first kind of seriously being studied in the 19th century, folklore was very much seen as something that was kind of passed down orally from person to person and generation to generation. But it was also seen as something that was really in danger of being lost. So there was this sense that as the world became more urban and more industrialized, folklore was going to disappear. All these kind of traditions and stories were just going to disappear, and we needed to capture them, to preserve them, to make some record of them. And that's really what the Folklore Society was all about when it was first founded in 1878. But these days we have a much more kind of liberal view of folklore. We know that it is certainly not as endangered as we once feared that it was. It's something that adapts. It's something that changes with every generation in order to survive. So yeah, there isn't this fear that we're losing our folklore anymore. More about kind of how is folklore adapted in the past and how does it continue to adapt in the present.
Let's Kerry, let's skim down the list that I came up with, which I have to admit was thieved from your website. But we sort of had things like traditional music and folk music and song, and obviously things like sea shanties and labouring songs come into that category.
Absolutely, yep, and tavern songs. So kind of all manner of performance really can fall into folklore. So the songs that people were singing, dance and drama as well. So you have folk dance, you have folk theatre, um, you have all those traditional narratives. So the stories that people have told, and whether those are kind of great big epic legends or whether they're more localized folk tales, even kind of family folklore, family narratives fall under folklore. You have folk arts, folk crafts. So these can be anything from kind of straw dolls to paper airplanes, just things that people craft,
Yeah.
usually kind of from materials that are around them. Customs and beliefs. So our calendar year is full of customs, festivals, um, things that people practice as communities, but also just as households or as individuals. Most recently, we've had bonfire night,
Mm.
um, and kind of the different iterations that that's gone through are fascinating when you think about how kind of gunpowder plot night was kind of mandated. You had to celebrate it kind of under order from the monarch. Whereas now it's just a kind of night for sparklers and fireworks. Often
Yeah,
kind of amalgamated with Halloween.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, really interesting adaptations there. And then you have things like over quite quite obscure local customs like Gloucester cheese rolling, rolling tar barrels at Ottery. My local area in North Manchester, we have an annual black pudding throwing competition. So local areas have their kind of their quite niche
Yeah.
niche customs.
I mean,
But people are very
I have to say that, I thought the question of the rolling the cheese was something, but actually chucking black puddings at people really makes you think, doesn't it? Interesting though that you were talking about fireworks night, the gunpowder plot, and everything like that. Some people subscribe to the fact that Lewes in Sussex, the fire celebrates the death of martyrs burned at the stake prior to the gunpowder plot. Have you come across that?
I've come across the issues around what you're actually celebrating in a historical context.
Yeah.
But I don't know the history
No.
of Lewes. I
No.
know that it does a kind of a massive display every year, but I'm not sure about the history. I think these kinds of customs are really interesting when we try to trace them back, and I think it's easy to kind of get bogged down in the origins,
Yeah.
of something, and where it came from. I think it's more important really to think about what it means to people today, and acknowledge that all customs change meaning. They've always changed meaning. It's very, very difficult in folklore to ever find kind of the origin of something. So I think, yeah, I know that there are debates. I mean, there are the debates about whether bonfire night should even be celebrated, because what are we actually celebrating? But it's what it means to people today. And I think what it means to people today is a chance for communities to get together as the nights are getting dark and cold, and to just watch something that's exciting and beautiful, and not worry too much about the kind of the historical context. So yeah, that's a kind
Yeah.
of folklorist perspective, but I know historians have a very different view.
Well, that's what they're paid for, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about food then? Traditional and regional food. Um, we're talking about what Cornish
Yep. So
pasties and
yeah, sorry,
things
go on.
like that. Yeah. Mm. And obviously up north,
Yeah, so
black
most
puddings.
local areas have their yeah, absolutely, which we toss at people. But yeah, kind of every local area has its own food, its own thing that they're proud of, that they kind of that they link into their identity. Whether they actually like it or not is another matter. So we have black puddings in North Manchester. We have black peas. We have Manchester tart, which very
Yeah.
few people have eaten. We've got simnel cake. Um, again, these tend to be linked to times of the year when
Yeah.
people will make them and eat them. Again, origins really, really difficult to get hold of, and often it is a case that when you delve deeply into the origins, they haven't necessarily come from that place; they've come from somewhere else.
Mm.
But it is a matter of pride. It is about a matter of local identity. Um, but it's also about diversity. If you think about a lot of the dishes that we eat today, just show kind of migrant communities and how we've kind of embraced the different foods from different peoples and different cultures. So many people in Britain love a curry.
Mm.
So many people in Britain will have fortune cookies to celebrate Chinese New Year, even if they're not actually celebrating it. So I think what I love about kind of food folklore is just going into my local supermarket. You don't think of a supermarket as being kind of full of folklore, but actually, if you go and have a look in the seasonal aisle, um,
It's
it's
there.
just shelf upon shelf of food folklore. This time of year, you're starting to see things like chocolate logs appear on the shelf. You think about chocolate logs as Christmas, and that goes back to kind of the Yule log, which
Hmm.
people, an actual log that you put in the fireplace.
Yeah.
So if you think about all these kind of adaptations that this food stuff has gone through, um, and we can complain about kind of commercialization, but I find it absolutely fascinating. So yeah, next time you're in a supermarket, have a look at the seasonal aisle and think about the amount of history and folklore behind each one of those packaged foodstuffs.
I shall bear that in mind. What about stuff like witchcraft?
Yeah, so I mean, witchcraft and the fear of witchcraft comes from folkloric beliefs. I mean, it comes from religion, and folk religion is quite a hazy subject because religion and folklore overlap so much. But it was through religious and folkloric belief that things like witchcraft or the fear of witchcraft came into being. Um, and that there was so much around kind of folkloric beliefs over how you could protect yourself against
Mm.
witchcraft, how you could counteract what you thought was a witch's curse, things like witch bottles, hanging a horseshoe over your door. Another really interesting example. So the horseshoe was originally used to protect against witches and to protect against fairies. The horseshoes survive today as a symbol, but it's more about luck. And you
Yeah.
see this so much in kind of objects and rituals that were originally meant to protect against very specific supernatural entities, today being used more for good luck.
Mm. What about children's folklore, Kerry? Grimm's fairy tales and nursery rhymes?
I love children's folklore, um, but I find children's folklore really difficult to study because what I define as children's folklore is is the lore that's passed from child to child rather than the lore that is told for children. So the Grimm's fairy tales are actually, even though they're kind of the title of their book, Kindle and Housemarken, is children's and household tales. But these tales weren't recorded from children. Largely, they were adults telling
Mm.
the Brothers Grimm these tales who recorded them. Um, so this really is kind of adult folklore that was packaged for children. Children's folklore are the things that children do in the playground, and the stories that they tell each other, um, the beliefs that they hold, kind of separate to what adults are telling them or teaching them. And that's really hard to access. It's really difficult to get a kind of unbiased view of what child lore is because an adult folklorist coming to a child and saying, "What's your law? What stories do you tell?" They're not going to tell us the rude stuff.
No, no.
They're going to hold some things back. Some things are kind of sacred to children. Um, so it's really difficult to access child law. One way I like to access it is through material culture, so through the objects that children have used. And there's really interesting things that come out of playgrounds, like those. I don't know. I normally are able to show it, but those kind of paper fortune tellers,
Yeah,
where you fold them
I
and then you put
remember.
them on your
Yeah.
finger and your thumb, and yeah, absolutely. They've got a really long history, and they're essentially a game of divination. Um, and it's fascinating that's an example of child law that has very much survived to the present. But the fortunes that are under those flaps of paper change year on year. So a teacher who I spoke to, who was teaching in the 2010s, said that all of the fortunes in those paper fortune tellers were about things like, oh, you're destined to marry Justin Bieber,
Yeah.
or you're destined to marry Zac Efron. And actually, a lot of girls in the class were getting very, very upset that they weren't going to marry Justin Bieber because the fortune teller told them so. Um, so, yeah, I find it really fascinating to look at kind of historic examples of those paper fortune tellers compared to the present.
What about traditional sayings and superstition? Fingers crossed, um, break a mirror, 7 years bad luck, and all this sort of things. Every cloud has a silver lining. I mean, they go
Yeah,
down through the generations, don't they?
they do. And again, it's really, really hard to find their origins, to find where they came from, to find what they may have originally meant. So why does crossing your finger
Yeah.
actually give you good luck? Is it connected to the cross, to the crucifix, or is it something else? And then proverbs. Yeah, every culture has proverbs that kind of give insight into that culture's values, their priorities, their beliefs. Um, And superstitions and proverbs are a really good example of folklore of everyday life, things that we do all the time without thinking this is folklore, without even really thinking about it. I see a magpie today, a single magpie, and I will wave.
Mm.
And it'll just be instinct. I'll just wave to it.
Looking for the
And I
second
can't,
one.
yeah, exactly. Let there be a second one. But that rhyme of kind of one for sorrow, two for joy has actually changed over the generations. So kind of what different numbers meant has changed depending on where in the world you are or when.
Yeah.
So again, folklore is very, very adaptable, and these proverbs and these superstitions haven't survived unchanged over the generations. They're constantly changing, but they're also something that we practice without really thinking about it.
Where does religion fit into superstition?
Yes, that's a really, really
The curved ball.
it's it's such a hazy line. Religion feeds so heavily into superstition. Um, so much of what we did historically to protect ourselves, for example, involved things like the Bible, things like the crucifix. So yeah, they're really, really bound up. And there was, the church was very concerned with how kind of religion was being used for superstition, for superstitious purposes. But they also acknowledged that to make religion part of our everyday lives, they had to accept it.
Yeah.
So there were levels of superstition that they just tolerated. They kind of turned a blind eye to them, and let people carry on using the Bible to protect themselves against witches, or putting the crucifix under their bed at night to protect against fairies. They just accepted that the two things just kind of lived side by
Yeah,
side.
yeah, they had to put up with that, as it were. But you know, I mean, when I was a kid, you know, if you did something really bad, broke any of the Ten Commandments, you wouldn't go to heaven. And I think, in many respects, um, control of people for a couple of thousand years was very much involved with religion, saying misbehave and you won't go to heaven. Behave, and there are a load of nice things up there for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we've had that. Yeah, we've had that in cultures. It's not just Christianity. It's all religions that
Mm.
if you live a good life, you will
Yeah.
be rewarded.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, absolutely. And folklore is, I mean, follows that to an extent. There are so many folk tales that are cautionary tales that are telling you to be good, be honest, be brave. That's what so many folk tales, they have that kind of moral. So, again, they're not really that separate, um, which is why it's so difficult. Yeah, it's so difficult to draw a line between them.
Okay, so we've talked about supermarkets, modern. Tell us a bit more about modern folklore, Kerry, you know, in terms of the fact that's your speciality.
Yeah, absolutely. So folklore is all around. And like I said, in the 19th century, they were studying it because they really believed it would disappear, that we would all become far too rational, far too urban to have kind of folkloric beliefs and customs. But that hasn't happened at all. So much of what we do is folklore, whether that is the customs that we celebrate for, particular times of the year, whether those are things like rite of passages, like you know, lighting candles on a birthday cake, singing a song, blowing the candles out to make wishes. That's a kind of a culmination of lots of different beliefs and practices over time. There's one belief that the candle in the cake, for instance, dates back to kind of ancient Greece, and that the candle smoke is supposed to kind of take your wishes or your prayers up to Mount Olympus or heaven.
Mm.
So yeah, lots of different practices form the customs that we're practicing today, often without thinking of it as folklore. And our landscapes, for instance, are full of objects that tell us that people are practicing these kind of these folkloric rituals. Um, all the tree stumps and the logs and the trees that are covered in coins that people have hammered in to make wishes, they're scattered kind of throughout Europe, really. the love locks, those padlocks that people have put their names or initials on, and they've attached them to bridges, and then thrown the key into the water below to kind of ensure that the couple stays together. That's symbolic magic. So even if people who are doing it aren't thinking, well, this is a magical practice, or this is a folkloric ritual, that's what they're doing. They're using this long history of the symbolism of love locks, of padlocks,
Yeah.
to do a kind of love ritual. So, our landscapes are full of evidence of the rituals that we're practicing. And, our online spaces, so social media is so rich with folklore. Spend 2 minutes on any social media platform and you will encounter folklore, whether that is in the form of fake news, or whether it's in the form of somebody just sharing a story, a memory, something that they've experienced, or whether it's some kind of online trend. Online trends are examples of folklore. The word meme, in terms of some kind of cultural unit that's passed from person to person, that's what the word meme originally meant. That's folklore, an element of culture, a unit of culture that's passed from person to person. So it doesn't matter whether those are, funny cat videos that are going viral online, or whether it's a story that somebody was telling to kind of villagers 200 years ago, and that went viral. So folklorists have long acknowledged that folklore is very, very healthy today. It's proliferating online in digital spaces, and we're still telling stories, we're still practicing customs, and we're still holding beliefs.
In your capacity as a researcher, then, do you actually sort of run computer information on how you see modern folklore? I mean, it's not nebulous, is it? You obviously, as a researcher, have a duty to put it down and record it and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I know that there are quite a lot of teams, folklore teams throughout the world who are focusing on digital folklore,
Mm.
and they use various algorithms and technology to record it. And I also know that the British Library were talking about trying to archive kind of online folklore, but it's so fast paced. It's so difficult to capture. I mean, for instance, I used online sources to kind of understand why people were hammering coins into trees, or why people were attaching love locks to bridges, for
Mm.
instance. So that's one way you can use online lore. But I know other people, other folklorists, who are a lot more active in trying to record the kind of the speed of transmission, how quickly a tale is shared online to an international audience. You think about the internet and what it's given us, this kind of platform for sharing a piece of folklore instantly with the entire world,
Yeah.
which is something we've never had before. So it's absolutely huge. And the questions of AI and what that will do to folklore, what impact that will have, is something that, folklorists are asking now, and wondering what will become of folklore in the future.
I think a lot of people are a bit suspicious about AI, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I
You
am one
know,
of them.
yeah, me too. So from that point of view, I suppose you're going up a sort of bit of a one-way street, a cul-de-sac, if you get into AI too deeply on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people distrust it, and don't particularly want to engage with it, but also acknowledge the fact that you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's
sure.
here, and it's I think what we have to do is try to work with it to mitigate the negative impact. I mean, I'm hoping it's just a fad. I'm, I'm still head in the sand, really hoping that this time next year we'll be laughing about, oh, remember AI last year. I hope, but yeah,
Yeah.
it may be here to stay, and we
I,
have
I,
to. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think you're right, and I think it's a bit major concern in terms of employment and stuff like that for the future. You know,
Yeah.
people are put out of work. How do you actually sort of, you've got to really re-gauge society, haven't you? If that's the case, you've got lots of people that effectively become unemployed as a result of AI, we're then in
Mhm.
a situation where you've got to give them something to do.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, there are minds far greater than mine that probably know the answer, but I can't see it quite honestly.
No, it's scary. It is scary. And I mean, particularly in like the creative industries, artists, writers, who are scared with how quickly people are turning to AI
Yeah.
to produce tales and stories and artwork. Um, but I'm hoping that enough people will see the value in human
Mm,
creativity,
mm.
um, and yeah, won't be so quick to accept the cheap non-human version of things. I hope.
Have you got any specific projects on at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm working on two things at the moment. One is the National Folklore Survey for England. So this was funding that Sheffield Hallam University got, where we are surveying up to 2,000 people in England. And we chose England specifically as a kind of case study. It would be brilliant to do all the other countries. But it was meant to get a kind of representative sample of people in England. So representative in terms of age, ethnicity, where geographically they are
Mm,
in England, employment status, etc. And to ask them what folklore they know today, what customs they practice, what things they believe, what experiences they've had, to really kind of get a snapshot of folklore in 2025 in England. Um, there have been lots of surveys before now, but they've always had a weakness where, you know, they've targeted the kind of people that folklorists know. So kind of white middle class people. Whereas this survey is intended to be much more representative of
mm.
the population in England. So yeah, we've got the results from that and are currently just analysing it. Absolutely fascinating. And I've also just started working on a book about environmental folklore. So the impact that folklore has on the environment, both negative and positive. Um, so yeah, just started writing that on the back of the book that I've just published called Folklore: A Journey Through the Past and Present, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's all about um, the adaptations that folklore has undergone from the past into the present.
Mm. Can you give us an example of a couple of examples of good and bad when it comes to things like agriculture?
Yeah, so a few negative examples were things like the belief that hedgehogs were they were known as udder suckers in folklore, and it was believed widely and for quite a long time that hedgehogs would suck the udders of cows until the cow ran dry. So any instance of a cow not being able to produce milk anymore was blamed on hedgehogs. So
Right.
hedgehogs were classed as vermin, and they were exterminated. So because of these folkloric beliefs, um, you know, thousands of hedgehogs were exterminated as vermin because of this. And other negative examples are things like, you know, the festivals that we practice, the negative impacts that they have on the environment. And my book isn't saying stop practicing, stop celebrating these festivals. It's more saying how can we kind of mitigate the environmental impact that our beliefs and our festivities and our customs have on the environment.
Mm.
So I've just started researching that.
Hmm. Plus ones, got some positives.
Positives. So, for instance, the belief that swifts' nests are lucky, and you wouldn't want to get rid of a swift's nest. So, even if they were unsightly, even if they were kind of all lined up under the eaves of your home, you do not remove them because they bring good luck to the household. And there are records of the wealthy people who didn't believe in this superstition, who got rid of the swift nests, and ill luck befell them. So yeah, lots and lots of versions of that. And then other examples. There's a really interesting legend that's cropped up about this goddess on Hawaii. So my aim really is to write this book on an international scale. So people were removing the volcanic rocks from Hawaii as kind of souvenirs. But then this legend came up saying that it was cursed to do this. The goddess would curse you if you took anything off the island of Hawaii. So all these people were posting back their rocks that they'd taken with them from Hawaii, posting them back to the National Park Service, saying, please put this back in the national park. So this is a kind of folk tale that's emerged to encourage people to not take anything away with them, to not go kind of souvenir hunting in the landscape. So yeah, an example there of contemporary folklore that was created very much to serve an environmental purpose.
Yeah, very interesting. That you can imagine sending it registered post, perhaps, so you've got a signature for receipt on the other end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
when you fragile, it could say beware cursed.
When do you hope to publish this book?
It's not due until January 2027, so far in the future. I've got a full year for research and writing.
Yeah, and it takes that sort of time to do it properly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid we're just about run out of time, but can I say it's been most enjoyable talking to you, Ceri, and thank you very much for sparing me some time today. And I shall have a word with Mr. McDowell about all this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. All the best. Cheers.
You too. Have a nice afternoon. Bye.
Bye-bye.